Allen's Investigate, airing live on the United Public Radio Network, 105.3 FM in New Orleans. Yay, and welcome to the Allen's Investigate with me, Shona Allen.
And I'm Gary Allen, the Cockney Bard.
We're broadcasting live on the United Public Radio Network, 105.3 and 107.7 FM from New Orleans, and also on Roku. Now, this week, we'd like to welcome our very special guests, Rita and Phil Crosbie of Sound Beings. Rita and Phil are professional sound healers currently living on the south shore of Nova Scotia, Canada. Between them, they have over 60 years' experience offering a range of complementary and alternative healing modalities. And they're here tonight to discuss sound healing. Welcome, Rita and Phil. Yay, we can't hear you, Rita and Phil. There's no sound.
Is that better?
That's it.
Yay, the wonders of technology.
This on news night.
There you go, that's it. Just to prove it's live. There you go, not rehearsed. There you go.
That would be annoying. Doing a show about sound healing and then we can't hear you.
Oh, here, I know, you get the irony of it, but never mind.
Lord.
It's great to be here. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.
The wonders of technology.
Oh, Lord.
When it works, it's great, yeah. When not so much.
Apologies.
Bless you. Well, guys, I thought that perhaps we could start off the show talking a little bit about yourselves, about who you are, you know, where you come from. I sound a bit like Scylla there. Tell us who you are, where you come from.
Which is quite apt, yeah?
Yeah, quite apt. Definitely.
So what about you, Rita? Shall we go with you first then?
Well, it's funny because you were talking about before you were working in the civil service, so that's where I used to be. So I worked in like different government departments. I can't say all the jobs I had were cushy, to be honest with you, because I was in the social service sector where there was a lot of hassle. So it was, and then the asylum and immigration stuff. So yeah, it was sometimes a bit short. But, you know, a great grounding really, because through the government, I actually got the life coaching training that I actually use in our business. So
great.
Taxpayers' money went to something useful. So
good. For a challenge.
Yeah, thank you for that. That was really appreciated. For that. And then alongside, you know, I was always one of those managers that one of my CEOs said to me, you should have been a social worker. Because he saw like the fact that I always wanted to help people, including help people find other jobs actually if they were miserable. Because you're like, well, why would you want somebody to stay if they hate it with a passion? Let's try and find them something they love, you know. So yeah, I think sometimes they just thought my focus wasn't always on more for less. That was the whole government mantra, and I'm sure still the same today. But alongside of that, I'd studied like massage therapy and reflexology and Reiki, and then I dabbled sort of in aromatherapy, not qualified or anything like that. But there was always this, which we did alongside of our jobs, but there was always something else. There was always like, yeah, that's really great, but I don't know what it is. And then it was when I found sound therapy, that was the thing that almost turned me into that, like, yes, that's it, like this.
Yes, moment. Yeah.
It just touched the soul, you know, and that was the thing for me. So.
Yeah. Well, it's so important to have a passion for what you do, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely, Gary,
Yeah, I mean, we, you know, without sounding too twee, you know, we say this is who we are. It's not what we do. It's who we are. You know, we've got the biggest mortgage and the least income we've ever had. But we've got a life, you know. Yeah. So, and it is, we're living, you know, and that's the thing about with the life coach and stuff, you try and encourage people, to find out what their dream is. You know, and it does change, of course, you know, and, you know, somebody who's 60 can't be a prima ballerina now, you know, but we explore, well, what was it about being a prima ballerina that excited you, you know, and what can we bring into your life now to fill that gap? So, you know, well, all things are possible, really, but yeah, I think there's so many people out there with so much passion, but they just don't know what to do with it, you know, so it's, and we're also part of the, you know, the sound therapy experience for people, even when we do a big group. it really helps elevate their own consciousness, and it can be quite an awakening moment for them, not just particularly about awakening from a global thing, but just on a personal level, really, it can bring a lot of stuff up and that. So yeah, that's sort of my background. So yeah, we decided to practice what we preach. We were on a little trip to Carcassonne, weren't we? The south of France.
Oh, yes, we know.
Squeezy Jet.
Yeah, Squeezy Jet. There might have been a couple of glasses of wine involved in the conversation, maybe. Or so,
Yeah, we love Carcassonne. We've been there ourselves.
Isn't it? We were
lovely.
Friends last time saying, they need to go. But we were in a little Italian restaurant in France, bizarre, as you do, literally by the canal. And we both said, we encourage everybody else to live their dream, and we're actually not doing it. We're not walking our talk. And that was in the February, and by the May, we booked the flights, we packed all our belongings in a container, and we were here. That was it, So we got the house, interestingly enough, on the wages we used to have. We got the mortgage on that before we walked away from them. So, but yeah, that was it, wasn't it? So, and then you, my darling, what would you tell them all about you?
So you're doing Gary's show as well, obviously, we're both from Liverpool in the UK, and I grew up in a Coronation Street house, basically, those back entries and stuff like that. I always wanted to be a journalist when I went to college. I went to Sunderland Poly, and I wanted to be either a football or an investigative journalist. That was me, because I was a frustrated, non-achieving footballer in no way, got to no level, but I love sport. And then through that degree, really, I was up in the northeast, and it was after the miners' strike, post-miners' strike, and we got to see the other side of mainstream media really on that course, which was a massive eye-opener, because, I was a fresh-faced 19-year-old, not naive, but certainly naive to the ways of that world and the media. And that really opened my eyes. And 18 months in, I didn't want to be a journalist anymore, because I saw both sides of the miners' strike, and I actually had a cousin who was married to a copper at the time, and they all got posted up there, and they were all delighted because they were making mega money on overtime. And the poor old miners, were literally hand to mouth. And then you saw the footage that they'd filmed in their homemade documentaries and amateur filmmakers had made, a bit like Kev does, who introduced us to you guys. Who's now professional, of course. But, you then saw the other side of the police lines and the miners' strike, and it was a massive eye-opener for me. So the whole thing about news being edited and how it's shaped was a massive bringer home to me from that course. So that was one of the best things I ever got from it, apart from living away from home and meeting people from all over the world. That was amazing, that life experience. So I came out of that, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do. But again, because of that cousin of mine whose husband was a cop, I quite fancied something that was different and that was challenging. I guess in a way as well, a little bit macho in some regards in those days. But a bit of a career development, not bad money, but something that was different. I quite liked the idea of working shifts and working nights and stuff. So anyway, I joined Merseyside Police, and I did that for 18 years, and I ended up as a detective sergeant.
It certainly is a challenging job, isn't it, being a police officer? There's no doubt about that.
It is, Gary, it is. And, and they're just a cross-section of society, police officers around the world. And I'd still say, and no disrespect to anyone living in Canada or anywhere else, I still think the British police have some of the highest standards in the world, and I've witnessed it on both sides. So I worked with a lot of very professional people, but it is a hard career. But again, Rita and I both got into our 40s. Rita had done 28 years and I'd done 18. And it was just a case of, as Rita said, we weren't living it. We weren't living our dream. And we just lost both of us lost two really close family members. Both of them were funny and horrible enough to throat cancer. And in the previous 2 years separately, we both walked away from long-term relationships because, we were with nice people, but we weren't living our fullest lives.
No.
And we ended up getting together years and years after we'd ever first met. And the rest was like this very twee, very happy ever after fairy tale, because we found out that we had so much in common, including wanting to live abroad, that things just fell in our path. And we would say to people energetically, that's just because, you're living your passion, as Gary was saying before. We were actually being true to ourselves. and things just presented themselves literally sickeningly like a film, like a Disney film. They just fell into our lap.
Because you both have a connection to the spiritual church, don't you?
Yes, it will.
Absolutely,
So whose birthday it is today? It would have been 86 years old today. So it's a special day.
That's quite a coincidence, isn't it? Because it was founded, I think, on the 7th of July, 1937. So
it was,
absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah, it's kind of
bit spooky.
Yeah, you know, and that was. I'm sorry, Colton, you should finish what you said. I was going to say just quickly about the church. You know, that was, of course, in the UK, spiritualism is a recognised religion. You know, so it's not the same everywhere. So I know sometimes that word church puts people off, but it was so not church. It was great.
No.
But, you know, it was such a boon to the community. You know, it really was. You know, it was a great place. You know, we did teaching and training for people, but just for people to be able to come and sit quietly and sometimes get messages or not, but that community, that communion with people, and you know, of course, being Britain and being Liverpool, there was always tea and biscuits afterwards. You know, tea and cookies for our North American friends. You know, and you know, when all that got taken away, it wasn't just about the spiritual side of things. There was a hole left in that community, and that was
for sure.
You know, it was so sad, really.
Well, we had one in Norwich, and unfortunately, it was taken over by egotists. And you know, when the ego takes over, there's a problem. You know, but you do meet some wonderful people in the spiritual churches. There's no doubt about that.
Definitely.
Oh, you do. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I think anyway, isn't it? You know, we've all got an ego. Some of it's bigger than others, I guess. But I think anyway, where people can be in charge, then you know, you're going to end up with that, or unless you've got a lot of strong people around the country. No, that's not what we're doing. You know, and you know, but I'm sure you know the background to the Waterloo, which we were talking about on air. You know, that was like they should make a movie about that, because that was like very naughty.
Yeah, but then from a positive side of it, that's actually how you two met, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was absolutely. Yeah. So tell them what drew you there.
Well, Rita had been working there for years, and that's where she'd met Kevin, who was our mutual friend.
Yeah.
I've known Kevin 23 years this year.
Yeah, he's a wonderful man. Yeah.
And very, very intelligent. And he's Kevin's a great psychic medium.
I bet his ears are burning. I bet his ears are burning right now.
Yeah, it's all right. His head will be going like that. He'll be fine. He'll survive. He'll be good. He'll be good. We love him to bits.
Just briefly how I got there. I was actually off work. I'd had an off-duty motorcycle crash, and I had a bad knee injury. But I was always interested in psychic ability, and that fact that, you know, it always seemed like something other, and that's something I want to get across today to people. We're all psychic, and we're all healers. Yeah. And it's just about finding that way of how to do it, and actually meditating and tuning in, as they say. That's the way to do it, peeps. And I never thought it would ever be me, but I had some weird stuff going on in my house, really weird phenomena. And I went there, and I knew about it because that cousin that I was talking about, who used to be married to the cop, she went there after my uncle passed suddenly on holiday. She needed that comfort, and I knew where it was, so I thought I'll go and ask them maybe. And I was off work, obviously injured. Couldn't work, and it was like, well, now I've got some free time, let's, you know, do a little bit of one of my interests, you know, about that. So I went and met Kevin afterwards, and there was free tea and bickies, as Rita said. So that was as a copper, you know, whenever you get free tea and bickies, that was a bonus, you know. So we said, so what brought you here? And I told him that there was weird phenomena. He goes, oh, well, let me just tune in. I didn't know what tuning in meant then. And then he basically told me all about the recent building work that had been going on in my house. And I'm like, how does this guy know this, you know? And a bit scary in a way, because he was so accurate, it was ridiculous. And he basically said there was an entity there. Someone had been using the Ouija board, and it hadn't left. Such as, like, we had a tile floor in the bathroom. 3 times the light bulb had come out that I'd screwed in, and it had fallen like the 8 feet or 7.5 feet to the floor, but not smashed. So there was weird stuff like that going on, and experience and all different things. And Kevin described everything to a T. Later on, we cleared the house, but I was sort of hooked.
Yeah.
And Kevin he had the long hair then and the glasses. He's got a great sense of humour. He's only a couple of years older than me. Yeah. We got talking about football and blah, blah, blah. And I thought, it didn't seem like a church in any way. You know, I was brought up Catholic, ex-altar boy. So not like a church. The people were really friendly. The hymns were uplifting, for one. Yeah. really positive vibe in there.
Yeah.
And then Kevin turns around and says, "You've got a big healing vibe with you, you know." And I said, "What does that mean?" Like, no clue. And then he told me, and then he said, "Oh, we have a psychic development circle and meditation." Now, the meditation appealed because I did have a really busy day job, usually when I wasn't off injured. So that appealed. But the whole psychic ability thing, I'd always been interested in that. So when he said you can develop that, I was hooked. So I was like, well, I'm off work and I've got the time. I'll come and try it. So that was me hooked. And then later on, Rita was one of the instructors there, showing people how to meditate, how to tune in, how to give messages properly and ethically. And that was it. And it was a whole new world of fascination. And once I turned 30, I noticed I was becoming more spiritual. I was more aware of nature and not about material things. And then there's the otherworldly things like, you know, spirits and ETs. I'd always been interested in sci-fi. So all that just, you know, really sparked an interest.
Yeah. Once you touch on this world, though, it's very difficult to mix with people, really. You know, if you've got a job as a police officer, you know, it's difficult to talk to others about it and sort of like fearing a bit of ridicule and everything, you know.
Well, absolutely, you know, absolutely, Gary. And I never really came out until I was just about.
Be careful.
Yeah, no, it's true. This is what it was. I was just about to put my ticket in to resign, and I started telling some of my colleagues, some of the staff that work for me, some of the DCs, and I told a couple of close mates, the DS, the detective sergeants I worked with. And it's really funny, you know, because once I said it, I thought I'd get the banter. Yeah. And I didn't get anything. And I had people saying to me, "Oh, good on you." I didn't have anyone saying, "What about your pension? What about the money?" Not a single one. And I don't know if you know many cops, but usually they're ruthless over money. Like they would sell the granny for 2 hours overtime. Do you know what I mean? A lot of them, and particularly detectives. But any coppers watching will know. But anyway, I got no banter. And loads of them like said, one of the female officers who was a brilliant detective said, "I've always wanted to run a Pilates gym." She said, "If I had 100,000, I'd pay off my mortgage and I wouldn't be here tomorrow. I want to do Pilates." You know, she said, "Good for you." Then I had one of my staff, barely 14.5 stone rugby league player from St. Helens. When I tell him this, and I'm expecting a bit of banter, he goes, "Oh," he said, "that's interesting." He said, "I did aromatherapy." He said, "I'm qualified as a practitioner. And if I hadn't joined the police, I was going to set up that and do like a wellness clinic stroke physio thing." And like, really? And then all these people came out with these different things that they'd rather be doing. Some of them spiritual, some of them physical. But so many of them weren't doing what they really wanted to do. And I didn't get any stick whatsoever. And I was really expecting it, especially when I said, you know, we're going to bang gongs for the living.
Yeah, exactly.
And we talks to dead people, you know. But all the meditation thing and stuff, people were well into. And I actually got some of my staff doing that before I came out, just to relax. And it worked for them because obviously very busy, very stressful. And it worked for a couple of days. And one of the guys was a 27-year con. He was a uniform guy attached to us. And he said it changed his world because he was so stressed with the workload. I got him a meditation tape. It was like Reiki music, and that we used for Reiki courses. And he loved it. So I didn't get any of the banter that I thought I was going to get. But what I did get was a whole load of people who wanted to do other things, which was interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting.
And so many people said to us, "Go on, good on you. Go and do it," because so many of them wish they could, and for some reasons, you know, financial, they had kids at college, or they had young kids, or they were on a second marriage, or both, and so many of my colleagues, and I'm sure it's true in any profession, any office, or wherever you go, so many people, as we said, weren't living the dream. So we decided there's enough of the talk, you know, and let's do the walk.
Yeah.
Just quickly, just going back to the civil service just for a minute, because we do. Well, pre-COVID stuff, which is a whole different conversation, isn't it? We would do corporate things, we do stuff for businesses, because helping people understand, we can't always change what's going on around us, but we can absolutely influence what's going on inside. So, you know, stress, whether you call it stress management, or it doesn't really matter what label you put on it, but once you give people some techniques about coping differently, from a business point of view, it actually reduces sick leave. So one of the jobs, when I worked in the government and I was promoted to manager levels and stuff, I worked in a number of offices that were really poor performers, in inverted commas, and there was a really great chief exec. I won't say where he's from, because then people will know who it was. Brilliant guy, just love him to bits. And the office was in a terrible state. It was like making the papers for all the wrong reasons. And he basically said to me, I don't care what you do, improve it, just keep me out of jail and keep me out of newspapers. So I was like, thanks. What a job, what a remit. I was like, oh my God, this is great. So I don't think at the time, to be fair, he really truly understood what that would mean to me, but I was like, oh, wow, this is great, So I actually, we had the staff, like every day, not for all the staff, because obviously the office is too big, but every day there was meditation in work time. And we did stress management stuff, and I got people in, and you know what, like, it was twofold, because we'd given them skills, but also because we were investing in them, we were making them feel important, which they were. That just changed like everything around. And some of the other senior managers were like, I did get loads of steak and stuff, and I was like, I don't care, look at our performance, it's like, you stick to what you do, and then we're moving up the ladder, So,
Exactly,
from a corporate point of view, whilst it might seem a bit weird and a bit woo-wah, we've done it with medical professionals, the health service here, the Canadian military. It works. It absolutely makes a difference in people's lives.
Sure, and there is a science behind it as well, isn't there?
Yeah, and I guess
Absolutely.
I guess for some places that makes a difference, because there's been technology invented to measure it. But it doesn't take away from all the other energy work, that we just don't have machines to measure it. You know what I mean? It's just, they just like that because they can plug things in and they know what goes on with people's blood cells and stuff.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. It's a bit like love, isn't it? I mean, you can't really measure love with a scientific instrument.
Exactly.
But it's there because you can feel it.
Exactly, that's it, isn't it? It's like, it's as you see from our banner at the back, that's all about love. Interestingly enough, that image there on our banner, that's actually a cymatic image of the word love.
All right, wow.
That's what, because every sound has a shape.
Yeah.
So that's what love looks like. There you go.
Exactly. And it's very interesting, isn't it? Because that kind of leads me on to places like cathedrals, and in particular, I mean, you must have heard of Rosalind Chapel. I think most people have now because of the Da Vinci Code.
Yeah.
But that was a really interesting one, because within the architecture, there was actually one of the earliest Western scholars was called Sir Gilbert Hay, and he was actually the architect of Rosalind Chapel, I think back in the 1400s. Now, he visited China and Tibet, and it's sort of suspected that he brought back with him the knowledge from the Tibetans, because, of course, the Tibetans, as we know, were very well versed in gongs and also vocal techniques as well, humming.
Absolutely. The tone, and absolutely. Funnily enough, years ago, us and some friends had gone and stayed up in Scotland, and we were in a little place called Pittenweem in Fife, and we'd gone to Rosalind Chapel, and it wasn't super busy. I don't know, it was a fair few people there, wasn't it? But beautiful place. And we were all sort of tootling about, and then we just all sat down at the same time. It's about 5 of us, and we just started toning. We hadn't decided to do. We hadn't, we just like, we were all just compelled to do it. And I kid you not, everybody in the place, they just stood still, and the acoustics were fabulous. And I don't know, it maybe lasted 5 minutes. That's all, and we just all stopped at the same time and carried on. And everybody just then went back to taking pictures and talking. It was like, it was an interesting experience, but totally random, because it wasn't pre-planned, and not one person looked at us as if we were crazy or anything like that. They just all like, visit trip. I don't know, but.
And going back to your science thing as well, Shona, is that also, we all have ultrasound in hospitals and MRI, magnetic resonance imaging. Now that's for imaging, but ultrasound's used for soft tissue stuff. Like anyone who's played sports and has a swollen ankle or elbow or whatever, you'll have ultrasound on it to break up the crystals that give you that swelling and inflammation and pain. That's an ultrasound wave actually breaking those crystals down. And then you'll have sound waves that they use to get rid of gallstones and stuff.
Kidney stones.
Kidney stones, rather. They break them up with a sound wave that actually it matches the frequency that's holding together that stone, like an opera singer with a glass. And it's no longer able to, it's not so much destructive in a way, but it actually matches the frequency that's holding it together. There's an amazing YouTube video in uber slow motion. I don't know if you've seen it. And it literally just falls apart as opposed to exploding. It
Resonance.
Exactly.
Yeah, it is.
So there's all that sort of technology. And then Christie's Hospital in Manchester in the UK, just up the road, obviously from us, they were using something similar on soft tissue tumours, like in the 90s, and having 80% success rate, and no operation, no knife, and no chemo,
no side effects,
and no side effects, because it's all a very natural thing, because we are all made up of atoms and molecules. And
exactly.
Everything resonates.
Exactly. All life is a vibration, isn't it? Absolutely everything is in motion all the time, and it may be at different rates, but everything is in motion and vibrating. So, sound is a vibration in itself. So of course it's going to have an effect on a living system, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And the interesting thing as well, whilst we talk about sound, of course, it's about the vibrational frequency. So even people who are completely deaf, it's not about what you hear, it's about the frequencies.
The frequency.
Individual, so they still feel it, and what you hear, when we do a sound bath, we, particularly because we're in Canada, of course, we say to people, think of all the trees in Canada, that's the sound, and what you're hearing, that's the frequency, and you're hearing about 2 pine needles, because our hearing range is so tiny, but all the other frequencies are just like working. And it's really about restoring that homeostasis in the body. And we have so much around us, with Wi-Fi and all the rest of it, and the foodstuffs and the stress, that it's just like this chaos most of the time. We're remarkable beings when you think about it, that we're all still walking around in this soup of chaos energetically. So anything to sort of try and help the being, not just the physicality, but the being, to find some peace, then it can never be a bad thing, whether it's dancing around to your favourite music or walking on the beach. It's like, if it's bringing you peace and harmony, then you just need to do that.
Oh, exactly. Well, I think the thing is as well, water in itself is a very good conductor of vibration and electricity. And if you think about it, our bodies are approximately made up of about 60% water, maybe a bit more, but approximately. So we're like living cucumbers, really, aren't we?
My good God.
Hopefully slightly more intelligent, but anyway.
I've never heard that one before. I have to remember that. A walking cucumber.
I was called earlier this way. I was called It wasn't a cucumber, I can tell you.
But you're right, you're true, and that's why. And then you look at the work of Missouro Emoto and the effect of energy and positive energy and thought on water, and then you realize exactly what you've just said, cucumber, etc. That's why we're such amazing conductors of resonancy, and that's why everything can really so powerfully affect the human body for good or for ill. And in the modern world, a lot of it's for ill, isn't it? And that energy that's pumped out, and I hate to say it again, the mainstream media, the negativity and the fear and the anxiety and the division that is pumped out on a daily, almost every second.
The media thrives on negativity. If it's a good story, they don't really want it. If it's happiness, what good's that? We want to sell papers, don't we? And we want,
and energetically on this mainly water crystalline being. Imagine the effect that's having on us, literally shrinking and shriveling away, literally to early grave, because all that stress and all that negative energy contracts everything. The toxins can't escape out of our cells, and we all die way too young. There's obviously outside toxins in our food, our atmosphere, our water, etc. But the negative energy that gets pumped towards us as this walking transistor receiver, stroke, projector receiver, that's massive on the human body, and it gets turned in. So the more people can do to literally switch off and detach from all of that, physical exercise, good food, And we were talking today, we had some lovely friends stay over, bit of a surprise visit in a way. Find your tribe, find the people that you resonate. And ultimately, that's what we did. Eventually, we got together just because it felt right and it just worked. And lots of us have done, you know, second or third time around or whatever, because, you know, you gain life experience. But again, going back to your tribe, finding your vibration, someone that you literally resonate with. But if you surround yourself with friends that are like that, they become your family. But your tribe is very important now. That's what we'd say to people is find people that you resonate with, you know, and have fun, have a laugh, have a sing, have a dance. I remember that cucumber one till the day I die.
I was slicing up a cucumber for your salad.
Lord.
Oh my God, that's too funny. You know, there was the guy called in the act calm. You know, he says sound is the source of manifestation, and he who knows the mystery of sound knows the mystery of the universe. And
oh, that's good.
I know, it's cool, isn't it? You know, because he was a smart dude, what can I say? So, you know, when we think about, and it's something, you know, that's the thing we talk about the news and everything, you've got people focusing energy on everything they don't want.
Yeah, that's
And
right.
once we understand that frequency creates matter, or shapes matter, or informs matter, whichever way you want to think
just
about it.
like that symbol,
Just
up
like
there,
that symbol,
shape
you know, like
is love.
like Emoto and stuff. You know, when you think, and I know sort of like, you know, I said this once from the platform in one of the spiritualist churches I was at, because it was around Remembrance Day, and I don't know, there was like 60 people. It was a big place, and everybody all went on that. I folded their arms as soon as I started, and I was like, I don't care, Spirit wants me to tell you this. Because, you know, you think about, you know, 11 o'clock on the 11th of the 11th, you know, anything to do with numerology, amplification. Not saying we shouldn't remember the sacrifice, absolutely we should. But what we have is this worldwide focus on sorrow, war, loss, and pain, and death. Imagine if we, on that day instead, we acknowledged and remembered those people, all of them, you know, civilians as well, animals and everything, with gratitude, and that we celebrated the freedoms, well, depending on what country we're in, I guess, the freedoms, you know, that come out of that. That energy would shift like in ways that you couldn't put a word to, you know. But when you try and have that conversation a lot of the time, and I'm sure it will kick off some people listening online, it's not about being disrespectful. It's not about not being grateful. We've got to understand that when we have a collective focus on something, that is just fueling that to create more of the same, whatever that is. So if we can do that with love instead, and gratitude, and collaboration, and peace,
and positivity,
then, you know, like this world would change in no time at all. You know, it really would.
Exactly, and I think it's no coincidence as well. I mean, when you watch the news, I mean, I don't watch the news anymore, but you know, for people that do, you know, it's all so negative. You know, there's nothing really very positive about any of it, is there? It's all doom and gloom, and you know, people come away thinking, "Oh my goodness," you know, it's almost like the world's going to end tomorrow. It's so bad. But the thing is, it's the fear thing is the interesting thing, because something happens chemically in the brain when you're in fear, which shuts off your ability to think rationally.
Absolutely.
And I think this is why it's done, because it's basically to stop you thinking for yourself, stop you thinking rationally, and accept whatever it is that they may be projecting to you to accept.
Yeah, definitely. That's the thing. That fear triggers that survival instinct, doesn't it? Which then becomes very narrow, you know, almost selfish, can't trust anybody. And then we've been culturally conditioned to look outside of ourselves for help and support. So, you know, then we're looking, the government will save you, or this bod will save you. And it's like, actually, you know, it's outside. I don't know if you know, we had some, Canada's suffered hideously, like a lot of the states, with terrible bushfires, with wildfires. So one was literally over the sea from where we are, over the harbour. But, you know, out of that, you know, before there was any water planes or anything like that, I'd say within an hour tops, the community had come together in such a way that anybody that had to get out of home had somewhere to stay. there was clothes, there was food, there was kids' toys, there was nappy, you name it, anything you could put your hands on in your home, that was provided, all done, all free. And that was just people going through their homes or going to the store and just making sure that nobody wanted for anything. We ended up with so much stuff that came. There was literally 3 centres that did it, and one of them was the hockey stadium, which is huge.
Yeah.
And I saw a photograph of that, and it looked like Costco. Honestly, there was everything. There was tools, there was drills, there was kids stuff, there was like all the clothes had been sorted out, you know, sizes and everything. Honestly, there was, and even now they call it just the free store, still food. And now it's like, if you need it, come and get it. And if you know, and if you want to leave a donation, if you can, that's fine. And that money goes to the fire service, because all the fire people down here are just volunteers; they don't get paid.
Wow.
So they like these
and that was all sorted by people.
And that was by people. So that's the community
thinking for themselves, doing it, and just getting on with it,
and not waiting for stuff. You know, and you know, when we talk about the news, like you say, to have people believe that the world's going to end tomorrow, everybody's horrible, you can't trust anybody, did it? But you know, it made me cry, to be honest with you, because the outpouring of unconditional love, people were driving, it would be like driving from Aberdeen down to London with trailers for animals to come and help, because there's lots of horses, there's loads of cattle, there's all sorts down here. And they were literally driving the length of the country, the length of the province, to say, I'll help you move the animals. You know, places where we've got fields, we've got a spare barn. Honestly, it was such, you know, after such a terrible tragedy, and we do know people who lost everything, there was such humanity that, you know, it was like, let's focus. This is what humanity is. This is this, you know, it's love, it's support,
independence, thoughtful,
you know,
creative,
care and kind,
resilient.
You know?
And all that was done without the government.
Exactly. Exactly. And once they got involved, it was a whole different story.
Absolutely.
And it was all done without the government. It was all done, you know.
Yeah, and everything you described, of course, you know, we had all that for 3 years, didn't we? And it's ongoing. So
it's horrendous. Yeah, absolutely.
We're all still here.
Sorry, Phil. I was just going to say, what it shows, though, is that in essence, most human beings are love, aren't they?
Absolutely. It does. Without a shadow of a doubt.
Absolutely. And that's the most powerful force or energy ever. And for me, having seen 57 years of life and the job that I did, and we're from a working class city like you guys, ordinary life, it's the most powerful emotion, and there's nothing that can beat it when people stand together and just do that for each other with no thing of gain or self-interest, but the act as a community and say and do things. What's going to stand up to that? You know, we forget about that power a lot of the time, and we don't embrace it. You know,
well, of course, you know, the reason I think most people forget about it is because we are having constant broadcasts telling us how terrible everything is.
Exactly.
And how
that's it. Yeah. I mean, you know, when we do group sessions and private sessions, but you know, we obviously don't go down any political agenda routes or anything, you know, but we always, you know, one of the things we say to people, you know, I know we don't live in a free world, but it's a free will universe. You make your choices. And your yardstick should be, does this make me feel peaceful, happy, and harmonious? And if the answer is no, we should say, why am I doing it? Why am I watching it? Why am I reading it? Why am I paying attention to it? You know, and if I don't do that, will anybody die? And 99.99% of the answer is going to be no. You know, so it's like, and that's it. You know what? The best thing you can do is don't watch the news.
Yeah.
I agree. Stop watching the news, because it's just.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Do it.
Talking about Professor Emoto, he's very interesting, but for people who perhaps don't know about his work, could you just sort of give us a little bit about him, please?
Okay, so did you want to take that?
Very briefly, Japanese professor, I believe. He was just interested, I guess, as well as in energy and the effects of thought and emotion. Great name as well, Emotion, Emoto. And he photographed crystalline water crystals with really fantastic photography. And then he did experiments where he got people to meditate and aim thoughts, prayers, whatever, at group bodies of water. He'd do it with small samples of water. And he'd look at the crystalline makeup. Similar to this image, everything has a shape, you know, sounds and frequency creates it. So what he would do is he then photographed it, and what he found was when he used words like love and harmony, community, or whatever, all the crystals were very perfectly shaped in the most amazing shape. Think of the most amazing snowflake that you've ever seen up close. And these were these water crystals that Emoto filmed. But then, if you then directed thoughts and words, he'd actually write a label, wouldn't he, and stick it on a jar of water. Hate, war, death, etc. They were all very distorted, very not harmonious, not symmetrical. They had all these amazing shapes that when it was positive and loving, and when they weren't, they were all distorted, very physically distorted and imperfect. So then what he did, he then got people meditating, and they actually purified a lake, didn't they, in Japan, a really heavily polluted lake. He got a load of people around the world, I believe, to aim loving thoughts and healing thoughts at this lake, and they literally purified the lake, water, energy, frequency, and it worked.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It is amazing. It shows again the power of people working together, doesn't it?
Exactly, and the power of thought, because at a quantum level, there is no separation between thought and action. It's all energy. It's all a vibration, as you were saying before, Shona. So there's no real separation in that quantum level of time or distance, or between a thought form and an action. It has the same effect. And that's what Emoto was showing, with vibration and frequency and different emotions projected outwards. So when you go back then to about the mainstream news and us being cylinders of frequency of crystalline water, that's bombarding us all the time as individuals. But what if we all got together, like Emoto's groups, like people have done with the Heart Math Institute, where people have meditated, and through their instruments around the world, they've measured a physical absolute decline in terrorist activity, violence, assaults, etc. Because people were beaming out essentially love. And they were doing it collectively as a species around the world. So if everything that is currently happening in the world was turned inside out, all of that stuff would simply disappear, because it wouldn't be able to exist in that frequency. And that's what we encourage people in our group sessions, and we've been doing it particularly from the onset of COVID. That's when we came up with this idea. Let's project love. And we put the LOV, linking our vibrational elevation, a bit twee. But that's what we do. That's what love is, linking that vibrational elevation of I feel strong enough about myself. I love you, and I love you as a neighbor, and I'm just going to beam it out, and it makes everyone feel better. But it has a very powerful effect.
It does,
in any sort of group thing where people are having fun, expressing themselves, I suppose, being themselves authentically, maybe at a pop concert, at a classical music concert, whatever, where they come together and enjoy what they're doing. They share that collective experience. We were watching the Wham documentary on Netflix that's just come out, and I wasn't a Wham fan, but oh my God, what joy they brought to people. And then you saw Wembley with 75,000 people singing and dancing. That's pure joy. That's pure bliss. That's pure love. People love for them, love for their fellow people, love for actually being happy and singing and dancing. You got to beam that out. And we say that to people. We've been saying it since COVID. That's why we came up with that. And just wanted to remind people, A, how powerful we are. A, what amazing beings we are, spiritually and physically. And then we keep trying to reiterate it. And now we're stepping it up in all of our group sessions. The power that we have to affect change through a vibrationary thought called our feelings, through our brain, but really it's our heart. Because again, through the Heart Math Institute, they've actually measured the heart, and it's way more physically powerful. There's way more electromagnetic energy coming out from our heart chakra than there is from anywhere else. It's way more powerful than our brain. I believe hundreds of times more powerful. So it's about this. It's about the feeling of feeling human, but also the powers that we have. Like that, that naive, in a way, 34-year-old cop that went to a spiritualist church because he was interested in ESP, and then realizing that we can all do it. Within a few months, I was meditating for minutes on end. I couldn't focus for more than 30 seconds because I was always thinking about work, even though I was off. I was always thinking about work. Once you tune in, you calm yourself and you focus on other things. you realise that you can pick up on other people's feelings and emotions.
Well, that's right. And the great thing about it, Phil, is as you begin to learn it and understand it, you then begin to find synchronicity in your life, which is a wonderful thing, isn't it?
And I think, well, I don't think I feel, I know that synchronicity comes from actually just being authentic, doing whatever your thing is. Might not be this, might be pottery, it might be whatever. We always say to people, do it. Find your passion, find your thing, and just do it, because then you enjoy and you're relaxing and you're happy. So all the energy flows, and the energy flows into you, and then it flows out because you're beaming out joy and happiness. And this wonderful harmonious synchronicity, as you say, this entrainment that you, from the musical term, it starts to affect people. If you're in a room with a positive person, you know about it, suddenly you feel uplifted, you know, laughing and joking, making the cucumber thing. That'll make me smile for forever. So thank you for that.
Thank you for the cucumber.
Incorporate it into your courses now.
I don't like
We'll definitely credit you guys with that, because
you know, the most important thing I think is where we're leading now, and we are definitely leading that way, is the path of truth. The path of truth is amazing, and when people get on that path and they really understand that path, the path of truth, there ain't no turning back.
No, there isn't, is there? What does it say? The truth will set you free, but first it will pee you off. And it's like,
well, exactly. It doesn't make you very popular, does it?
No, not at all. No, we've had a very interesting journey regarding
lots of people.
Like lots of people, Like, you know, it's there has been definitely some moments where, you know, for all we were tuned in, everybody were like, oh, wow, did not see that coming, you know, because it's like, but you know, everybody's on their own journey, aren't they?
But you find that when you first start out on the path, basically, and you tend to want to tell everybody of your experiences without realizing that they're thinking, oh God, what a crank or what a nutcase this is. And then eventually when you sort out the wheat from the chaff, and then you know what you're doing, and then you're basically only talking to people that can really understand. And you don't waste your time and energy on that, and then you're just making the right connections all the time. So it's really, it's fascinating. It's a fascinating road, you know. And of course, you know. Sorry.
No, go on.
Oh, I was just going to say that, you know, when I first started out 30 years ago, you know, and I didn't realise that the trained skeptics, the professional skeptics, like Wiseman, French, Randy, and many others, that was what their job was, to stop it coming out. They didn't want people to know the truth. You know, but we now conquered that, and you're now moving on to a far greater thing now. So that makes me happy, definitely.
Yeah, us too. I mean, it's unstoppable, really, isn't it? You know, if you can do whatever they're trying, you know, but that's it. You know, the genie's out the bottle, and that's
genie's out the bottle now,
And that's the thing we said before about finding your tribe. You know, we found, you know, guys like you through our mutual friends, still back, you know, in the UK, and you're broadcasting to the States and around the world. You know, people are finding a tribe, and the beauty of the last 3 years, if I can call it that, is that so many people have done exactly that, Gary. They've sorted the wheat from the chaff. What's important? Lots of it's about. Sorry, go on.
Sorry, I was just going to say it's interesting as well because of the enforced isolation that was put upon us, in a way, from a positive way, it enforced us to actually go within somewhat, didn't it? To have to be in peace in our own space, because normally we're all worrying about, I've got to get to work at 9 o'clock or whatever. You know, is there going to be traffic? Is there this? Is there that? And you're constantly taken up with these, focusing your thoughts on your day and what's going to happen. But of course, the enforced isolation meant you didn't really have those thoughts anymore, did you? You were kind of like, I'll just go and sit in the garden then, you know, and be with my own thoughts.
I know for some people it was, you know, it was definitely a very dark time for them.
For sure.
But for a lot, I think, you know, we've definitely seen a shift where, because people, that was it, they were stuck at home and they were like, well, you know, and sometimes they go, that doesn't really make sense. I'm just going to investigate that a bit anymore. So suddenly they'd start reading stuff, or they'd start researching stuff and go, oh, actually, there's all this information over here that completely contradicts this over here. Let me have a little look into that.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's and I guess, you know, at the end of the day, there's never any accidents, is there? So,
No.
you know, maybe, you know, whilst that might not have been the intention for all that, you know, the flip side of that was like, actually, more people have probably opened up to stuff.
Yeah, I think it's a great period of exposure now. You know, that's the point. And you see people who are in the darkness, or people who, you know, are not telling the truth, and that they're being greatly exposed now. And there's no stopping it. You can't stop the truth. You know, you just can't. It just, you know, there's no stopping it.
Yeah, I don't know about you guys in Britain, but, you know, so in Canada here, they passed a censorship bill, C-19, a couple of weeks ago, and, you know, it's like our flag should just look like China, to be honest with you. It's crazy, you know, it's like, it's just insane. But, you know, people are smart enough to be able to get round waves on the internet and get stuff still and share information. But
well, I think people are realising the last 5 prime ministers we've had, including Liz Truss, Richie Sunak, Boris Johnson, Gordon Brown, and that, they're all WEF. I mean, so what's the difference?
You know, that lovely Austrian gentleman came out and bragged, didn't he, online, that, you know, his young world leaders, and mentions our prime minister. And he actually used the words, we've infiltrated half the cabinet of the Canadian government. We've infiltrated, that was the word he used. So I would say a lot of those people are just guilty of playing up straight up treason. You know what I mean? Just because they're actually
me of a James Bond villain.
Oh yeah, do you know that picture when he's got that grey outfit on? I've seen that thing, isn't that grey like uniform thing? And it's
the Emperor from Star Wars.
That's right. It's not like a man wearing an outfit. Like, oh my God,
classy is not very popular anyway.
Yeah, you know, it's just
not popular
again. Everything that they've come out with, you know, I don't know about you guys, probably the same, you know, labeled tinfoil hats or whatever, just for stuff you'd read years ago. But they're now openly coming out with it, so that they're no longer fibbing about it. They're no longer trying to hide it. They're just putting it right in your face. So karmically, I guess the rest is on us.
So yeah, exactly. You've only got 2 choices: either you go along with what they want, or you don't, isn't it? That's it.
Or you think for yourself. Yeah.
It's interesting, you know, because, you know, talk about energy and stuff and that, you know, I don't know, I've not had a conversation with Kev about this, but I'm sure he picked up the same thing, you know, for all, you know, I mean, the Earth's energy has been changing, you know, whether we think it's around flat and infinite plane, it doesn't really matter right now. But, you know, it's continually changing and elevating because our consciousness is elevating. But there was a massive shift in 2000. There was a massive shift in 2012. And then around 2019, you could definitely feel there was something brewing. You know, didn't know what it was. But I remember, like anybody, you know, when we were doing sessions, when I was just doing sessions with people, I kept saying to them, you know, you really need to be mindful. I mean, we should be mindful what we're focusing on anyway. But, you know, come March 2020, you really need to be mindful what you're thinking about, what you're focused on, because it's important that you don't go into fear. And I had no idea why, but it was like literally I was bombarded. You have to tell everybody this, even if these go crackpots, doesn't matter. You know, it's like everybody. And of course, what happened in March 2020? You know, there you go. So, but it was the energy through all of that, what I kept getting told from 2000, and it's been getting this build up, was all about authenticity. It was about being authentic. So whilst we've got, you know, the WF bunch, you can't say they're not being authentic, can you?
No.
Because they're like authentically in your face to the point where you want to say to people, oh my God, could you not see what's going on? But, you know, and that authenticity is played out in all of us. And I feel over the last, not just since the last 3 years, but I think that's elevated it. It's so uncomfortable now for people not to be authentic.
But it is interesting that there's a lot of people, I won't mention any names of these people, but they have an enormous amount of followers. But the truth is that they're shills, and they're telling you some truth and half truth and whatever. And they have a lot of followers, and people actually believe in them, you know, totally. But, you know,
and they all came out in the last years, didn't they?
as a police officer, you know.
Sorry, Phil, I missed that.
No, I was just saying that, and they all came to the fore in the last 3 years when we were all, locked down in our home and whatever. So we focused then on the social media and YouTube and everything else because we couldn't live another life. We couldn't go out. We couldn't. In Nova Scotia, they closed the beaches. Anyway. So we were forced into that, and then those people were ready there and have built big empires on and stuff. I absolutely agree, and it ultimately comes down to your intuition and your own. We have to go back to ourselves, and there's that wonderful Hopi saying, we're the people we've been waiting for, and we always were, and we always will be, because if you whatever your religion, and we're not religious, we are divine beings though, and we have amazing power. So we can connect to source or whatever you want to call it, and we can know the truth. And it doesn't matter if it's not the same truth as someone else's. We just got to live that authentic life. As long as Rita says, you're not harming anybody else, you're not being aggressive or whatever, but you're acting authentically, then, they're doing it a different way. But we have an amazing power, and that's what we try and remind people. Just be authentic, use your intuition. And does that feel right with you? That someone who's maybe so connected to the establishment talks a great job, but actually has got all these really powerful friends that are all connected to really other not so nice, powerful friends. And then you think, is there a disconnect there or not? And I'm not thinking of one particular person, but just use some common sense. How does that feel? Who's actually barred and banned, which doctors and whatever are banned or have been shut up or whatever over the years?
Exactly.
Don't just mean the last 3 years.
Well, it is a crime, isn't it?
Of course it's a crime. And who are the people who've been barred from social media and from sharing their information? And who are the people who are welcomed by the mainstream? Do you know what I mean?
It goes back to that same sentence, truth doesn't mind being questioned, does it?
Exactly.
So that just some common sense thinking around it all. No matter all the glitz and the glamour and the this and the that, just some really basic common sense, but without even having to be, an uber, spiritual guru person. Just use some common sense.
Exactly.
Is he saying one thing and doing another, or is everything they've said being rock solid from day one? And who's banned and who isn't?
Well, like I said, but that's shown, doesn't it? When people are in fear, they lose that ability to critically and objectively think. And that's the whole thing again, isn't it? Really,
that's why it's so important to have, to have programs and guests on like yourself. Who, rational thinkers, that's what we like. We like rational thinkers who can reason, that's the whole point of debate, isn't it? You can talk about something and rationalize and reason it. And, that's one of the most powerful things about proper debate, that's what we love, we love.
Yeah, and us too.
Absolutely. And it doesn't matter that we don't agree on everything. We never will. We're all unique beings.
All individuals. We're all individuals. Repeat after me.
It sounds like Life of Brian, doesn't it? Repeat after me. We're all individuals.
Yeah. Monty Python. We're quite sad with Monty Python. Loads of the sketches, we just know all the words.
Just very briefly as an aside, and this is like a few seconds. We're actually at a dinner table with friends.
Oh God, years ago.
And I think there were 6 or 8 of us around the table, and someone actually threw in the line. And I don't know what they were talking about, but someone in a normal conversation actually threw in the line, "What did the Romans ever do for us?" Now, we were off. And we changed with education.
We were just off on one,
and it all went completely over their heads.
Everybody down the table were just like,
I think we've been to dinner parties like that. Well, I'm not going to say what the joke was because it's not very politically correct.
It wasn't very PC, but very funny.
We fell about laughing. It was all very posh, and we fell about laughing. And of course, the rest of the table were completely stony faced, thinking,
"Oh my God!"
Well, I think they had that Liverpool humour too,
Yeah, that's it.
But it's not even that. Like there was tumbleweed going down the dinner tables. You know what I mean?
It was the most surreal thing, and we just shut up, and then everybody just carried on eating as if like nothing had happened.
And the sound of laughter is like probably the greatest sound healing that you could ever invent. Do you know what I mean?
Definitely.
because
absolutely.
Human beings just having a laugh and a joke, and sometimes it is such, like stuff that Ricky Gervais touches on and stuff, but he just speaks his truth and his authenticity. And if you don't like him, turn him off, or whoever, about whatever, it's your choice. But just people.
I've just got to, sorry, Phil, I've just got to interrupt you because I've just got to say, if you're just joining us, you're listening to the Allens Investigate, and we're broadcasting live on the United Public Radio Network, 105.3 and 107.7 FM from New Orleans, and also on Roku.
Woohoo!
Awesome. Going back before, you were talking about, people who were on mainstream media, and I think we're probably all on the same page about who we're talking about, a few of them. When we do workshops and courses and stuff about helping people with their own spiritual development, we're always at pains to point out to everybody, you are your own guru.
Yeah, absolutely.
And whoever, it doesn't matter to me, whether it's Deepak Chopra or whoever, just because somebody's made gazillions of dollars, they've got all the answers. So look at whatever you want on YouTube, go on whatever courses you want, read whatever books you want, whatever, but only take that which resonates with you. Because you'll know yourselves, when you connect. Because we are all connected, we are all one, we're all in that same sea of energy, we're the universe experiencing self individually, aren't we? But, all you can do is filter what you're getting through your own consciousness, with your own awareness, your own interpretation, your own language skills, your own perceptions. That was one of the great things about Waterloo Spiritualist Church, to be fair. They were very clear, instructions and guidelines about appropriateness, and you might be wrong. And I remember sort of one lovely lady, she was connected, she's very sweet. We were in an open circle, and you'd stand and help them, you'd help them do what they were doing, and she's tuning into this lady, she's getting something about her messages and whatnot, and the woman's going, and then she went, oh, I see a coffin with your name on it. Seriously, I kid you not, right? Well, you can imagine, everybody goes in the circle. And this woman, the colour so then this woman, the lady who's like doing it, stopped to chat. So I just got held her arm and I said, you just need to stop there because she's going to have a heart attack. So, she can't even hear what you're saying now. And what it was, this lady had exactly the same name as her mother. And her mother had passed not so long ago. So the woman's image of the coffin with the name on was spot on. But what she hadn't done was gone back and gone, hang on a minute, because we never know when somebody's going to die, and we don't tell them, and it was like, but she didn't go back and question. So there was definitely that wonderful tuition around appropriateness. But I mean, they all did have a good laugh at the end of it, because the poor woman who'd said it was then like horrified, she was like, oh my God, I didn't mean that. But that's how, you've got to be responsible. So we say to everybody, it doesn't matter how famous somebody is, how long they've been doing it, or you've got to explore whatever you're drawn to and take only that which resonates with you.
For sure, it's interesting. Shona had a similar thing, didn't you? When we went to that live thing where it was being filmed, wasn't it, with that bloke? I won't say his name, but anyway.
Yeah. Well, he was a well-known medium, and he came to me. It was being filmed for a documentary, and he got my dad's name correctly. And he said, your dad's passed, isn't he? And I said, no, I've only talked to him about 15 minutes ago.
So he's dead now.
He's passed. He's definitely dead.
No, he wouldn't have it. Anyway, what it was, I think it's sort of way back in the family. I think it was either a great granddad or something.
Right. The same name, yeah. Oh my God. I know.
You got to be careful, yeah.
You do. For sure.
And that's the interesting thing as well, isn't it? Because I've come across people, mediums, psychics, whatever, and somebody's saying to them, no. And they're going, yes. And you're like, no, you've got to take a no, then go back and ask for more, because obviously something's not right, It's like, oh my God, that's too funny.
It's an interesting thing, that.
But it is interesting, isn't it? I mean, I'm absolutely on the same page as you guys when you're saying, you have it all within you. You don't. I said this to somebody a while back, because they were sort of on the beginning journey of mediumship and everything else, and they were searching for someone to help them, to be their guru, if you like.
Right.
And I said to you, you don't need anybody. You develop yourself. You don't need anybody to do that.
No,
you know, it's all within you. You have
just
that
show
connection.
You the way, yeah.
And I think if you look back throughout history to many cultures throughout history, it really shows you they were telling you the same message. And this goes from the writings of the Upanishads and various different peoples, that you have the divine within you. You have it there. It's just recognizing it, the realization of it, isn't it?
Oh,
yeah, absolutely.
That's it. And you know, even in the Christian faith, isn't it? It's like you're made in God's image. Well, if you're made in God's image, then you must have all the same powers. Then.
Exactly.
Which I'm probably going to like rattle some cages against, probably all sorts of like emails getting written.
Well, you know, I can never understand it. When you know, someone said to me, "Do you believe in God?" I said, "Yeah, I believe in God." And they said, "But you're not religious." I said, "No, because God is in everything. It's a sublime intelligence that runs throughout nature. I mean, you know, it's everywhere. If you can't see it, well, I don't know."
Exactly. I think, you know, we were watching Kevin's interview the other day, and you know, I think Kevin said something like, you know, I don't believe in God, I know God.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the difference, isn't it? And you know, I remember him telling us years ago, one of the, like in the, you know, when, and it's not just in the Christian faith, but people would take their babies to be named. It was a naming ceremony, and they would give the baby over to whoever, you know, the priest or the holy man or the shaman or whatever, or woman, you know, and so the name would be brought, you know, that child would get the vibrational name that it needed and all that, you know, and it came through somebody else. So I think we talked about some church in Kirby, if you remember rightly, but apparently whoever the priest wasn't tuned in to do that. So it's like next in command, whatever they're called in the Catholic Church, I don't know. They'd be the one to do it. But then, I'm sorry, isn't it? My dad's family were all Irish, but we were like, no. My dad was like, no, not buying into all that. Not happening. But you know, so they would then go to like the next in command, whoever they were. But of course, that wasn't done then, because suddenly the priest wasn't the most important person. So it's like, no. You just come with the child. You just tell us what you want the child to be, and we'll baptize them like that. You know.
And there was a fee involved.
Of course, there was a fee involved, isn't it? But that's been throughout all the ages of history, where you know there's been that conscious connection with the divine consciousness. You know, and everybody, you know, they sat around fires, didn't they? And you know, out in nature, and I think even in the Bible it says something like, "Look under any stone and you find me there."
Yeah.
You know,
but you're right. But you say everyone is looking for a guru, and then we were talking jokingly, you know, about Monty Python. But if you go to the life of Brian, that shows it perfectly, doesn't it? Where people are always looking to follow someone.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, literally.
And that was part of his speech, wasn't it? And Brian actually said, "But you don't need anybody," didn't he?
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. And in such a, you know, brilliantly funny way. But they highlighted all that, and everyone always looking outside of themselves, and those learned gurus, you could say, you know, without offending anyone, you know, in all of the faiths, you know, we're just very wise men. And again, we'll talk a very quick instance, at the risk of offending lots of people, but this is what happens in a meditation one time we had, and it came a couple of times with different people, and the Christ energy came through, and I actually saw an image of him in the whole cape and all, three people I was in his whole usual garb with the long hair and the blue eyes and whatever, and next minute he turns into a guy in a pair of shorts, flip-flops and a Hawaiian shirt, and then put a biker jacket on. Now I'm a bike, we're into bikes. And I just smiled and thought, what is this? Am I on acid or something? And he just turned and he had this really big smile, and he went, you know what? He said, I'm just a doo-doo guy. Yeah. So, you know, and that in a way that's summated everything about all these wise men throughout history, whether it's him or Buddha or Muhammad or whatever. These were enlightened beings, I have no doubt, that were very attuned. And then the whole Monty Python thing took over, and people made them into something perhaps that they weren't. And again, you know, no offense to anyone's faith, but we're all that person. We're all that divine being. Yeah. With those amazing possibilities of connectivity, of healing, you know, of levitation or whatever, because some Indian gurus have done that. They've raised their frequency. That's an invisible eye. They've either taken off or they vanish completely because they've altered their physical vibration.
Well, there was a famous author who actually, his famous line was, the pen is mightier than the sword, called Sir Edward Bulwer-Lytton, and he wrote a book called The Coming Race and Zanoni. I don't know if you've heard of them, but that was allegedly his party trick, that he was able to levitate, and in front of some party guests, he levitated out of one window and into another.
That was so cool.
Wow.
I wouldn't mind trying that, actually.
Well, there was another guru, wasn't there? Remember that guru who had 6 Rolls Royces? Where did he go wrong?
Yeah. And then we go to the other thing, don't we, where you say where people are looking to be shaped and are looking for advice. There are then always some other people, not all of them, but some, that do take advantage of that and literally milk it to the extreme. You know, and that goes on today with certain people, you know, as we say, you know, very multi-millionaires, all because people are wanting to be led. Whereas you quite rightly say, both of you, we're all our own guru, we're all our own gods.
And you know, again, it's, you know, as long as people are being kind and loving, then that's all that matters at the end of the day, you know. But we've moved, you know, culturally conditioned to have been removed from the source, and source self. And anything that, you know, when you see it now, you know, the schools and everything, you know, it's not. And, you know, and I understand, you know, like I say, my dad, bless him, you know, as soon as he could not go to church when he was a kid, he stopped. He lied about his age, joined the Navy when he was 14. That was my dad, you know, one of 13 of an Irish family. But, you know, so sometimes that religion label freaks people out because they see the institution, and, you know, a lot of time they preach inclusivity and practice exclusivity and all this business, you know, not all of them, but some. But if we can get people back to understanding about getting away from technology, useful as it is, sitting out in nature, sitting around a fire, talking to each other, just listening to the birds, listening to the ocean, you know, listening to themselves breathing, for goodness sakes, you know.
Exactly. And do you know something I did the other day, which I haven't done since I was a child, and goodness knows I should take the lead from my daughter, because she does this all the time, is I actually went barefoot on the ground on our lawn outside. And you can really feel it. I was a little skeptical at first. I thought, okay, but I took my shoes off and I just put my bare feet on the ground, and you can feel that energy coming from the earth.
Oh,
for sure.
Yeah, you can. I think that there was.
And you are literally grounding yourself.
Ground them, yeah, definitely.
Literally.
There was, I think it was on a Facebook thing the other day. It was a little YouTube thing. And a guy, he has like one sort of shoe off and the other he had a shoe on, and he had a little voltmeter.
Oh, I saw that, yeah.
Yeah, and that one, the difference, like when he was barefoot, you know, and you're like, there you go, folks, there's your scientific evidence.
Well, that proves it.
It's 30 odd degrees.
You don't get this on Russell Brand, do you?
It's like life. It's 30 odd degrees. It's so humid. It's like I've got humid hair at the minute. It's so humid, that's why it's just on that. So
just scared the life out of the cat. Sorry about that, guys. It's live. It's all live.
But yeah, people need to do that. Don't they? Get on, you know, get out in nature, the sand, you know, the ocean, the grass.
Exactly. That's right. The thing is, it's very interesting as well. I mean, sort of getting back onto the whole sound thing again, it's interesting sort of looking back again through history, because there are actually many ancient civilizations who were practicing sound healing. And I think if we look, for example, at the ancient Egyptian religion, their creator god, Ptah, actually, he created the world through sound. It was through the voice and sound. That's how he created. So that's the understanding of creation. So they understood that everything is sound and vibration.
Oh yeah, and that sound creates matter. Even in the Bible, isn't it? It says, in the beginning there was the word, and God said, let there be light. So there was sound before anything else. Exactly. And, you know, Nada Brahma, that's sound God. That's what that means. Yeah. So, and then there's a lot of...
and then we have the Big Bang.
The Big Bang, even the scientists sort of... The Big
there was a bang before there was anything, there was sound.
Yeah. which that's a whole different conversation. I've never believed something started from that's a whole different thing. That's just.
But I think
that's why they call it the Big Bang Theory.
Exactly. Yeah, whatever. Like
scientific theory.
That like a theory. Yeah.
In the Vedic traditions as well, they talk about the earth being sung into existence, and so do some of the indigenous peoples of the world. I think, including the Hopi.
Yeah, about being it's born into being, and she sang
it into being. So sound, as you said, and we understand it, everything is sound and frequency.
Exactly. I mean, it was interesting because there was a Greek traveller called Demetrius, and he was circa 200 BC. And he actually wrote that the Egyptians used vowel sounds in their rituals. And he said, to quote, "In Egypt, when priests sing hymns to the gods, they sing 7 vowels in due succession, and the sound has such euphony that men listen to it instead of the flute and the lyre."
Wow.
Yeah.
You know, are you familiar with a guy called Jonathan Goldman?
Yes, I am.
Okay. So he's so of course he's all about the voice, isn't he? So there's a lot of work, and also what's his name? Robert Gass, is it? He talks about, he does a lot of toning and chanting, and that's it. Certain sounds can resonate through certain parts of the chakras. And help rebalance the body. So yeah, I mean, you know, people talk about chanting or communal singing, and they always really think about, you know, yoga or religious stuff. But you know, you go to a soccer stadium, football. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah,
we live in the
15 years in North America. You go to a footy match, and they're all singing. They're singing all the communal singing. You know, it's like a rock concert or something. You know, or you know, there's a brilliant clip on YouTube. I'm big fans of Queen as well. And before Queen were going on stage, and it wasn't Glastonbury, it was some massive outdoor place. And
I think it was Glastonbury, and the speakers had filmed.
Oh, was it? Oh, anyway. Anyway, they just started singing Bohemian Rhapsody. And you know what? You'll listen to it, and it makes you cry. All the harmonies, all the melody, but the whole place just sang it. It was just phenomenal.
Was that when Freddie Mercury was alive? Was it?
Yes.
No. I think
this one was. No,
I think what it was, Gary. It was actually no, it wasn't. It was at Glastonbury. I think it was at Glastonbury a few years ago, and it was a big rainstorm or something. There was a power outage, and the fans just entertained themselves. It wasn't before Queen, but they did sing Bohemian Rhapsody, and it was word perfect. Blah blah blah. But you know, if you've been to any sort of concerts we were saying before, or particularly sporting events, because that's very tribal, you find your tribe there, don't you? You know, and I've stood on the cop with 22,000 people, and it is almost
amazing.
It's like a religious experience, because there's so much emotion in it, and it's very authentic. And I guess it's from a place of love. You know, it might be misplaced in a bunch of multimillionaires skipping a bag of wind, you know, but that emotion is real. It's human emotion.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And that's what we try to say to people when we have our group events, about finding that emotion within themselves. And we will have certain events where we focus the intention. And we very much actually had the vibe in the last year of an Egyptian sound chamber going on when we're doing events. There's a very strong Egyptian vibe, and people who've gone there who are quite sensitive have picked up on it and have fed stuff back to us and said they saw various things, and we're like, absolutely, we saw the same sort of thing. We felt it there. They absolutely knew all about the power of sound. They absolutely did.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I think the thing is that they understood sound and resonance and vibration. I think it's very interesting because there was a guy, I think his name is Stuart Reed, sorry, he was an acoustician. And he claimed that his chronic pain in his lower back was healed while he was conducting cymatic experiments in the King's Chamber in the Great Pyramid.
Cool. There's reports around, particularly the Egyptians with their sound chambers, about curing cancer and everything really, and then you know, that connects with Rife's work, of course, with the frequency. You know, about, you know, it's a bit like that homeopathy, isn't it? You're matching the frequency to kill it. But you know, when we do group sessions, the first part of the session, we used to do some teaching, but we tend not to do it. It's more about the experience. So we get everybody to we do a little meditation, and we get them to focus on something that they really love. and to imagine them beaming that out like a big sunshine, that they're just big rays of light. And then we get them to tone, like just pick a vowel sound, whatever they're comfortable with, don't listen to their neighbour. And, you know, literally within 2 minutes, it sounds like you've got a choir of angels, because everybody's just in their own space, resonating their own body, and you get these levels of harmonics that are just, sometimes they're just jaw-dropping, aren't they? People cry because it's so over, you know, it's just so touching for them. But, you know, you think about, you know, when women are pregnant, not people, when women are pregnant, because
Lay them enough.
I don't care if it's controversial, pregnant women. You know, when the baby's in the womb, you know, that's really noisy. You know, they can hear the heartbeat, the blood, the mum's voice, whatever's going on around, you know, before you even add in the emotions that are all there, you know. But the hearing is the first thing to develop in that baby. You know, the auditory. So unless it's something, it's the first thing that develops.
It's the last sense to go.
And it's the last sense to go, apparently. So even people in a coma can hear. And they've actually, I think it was that Stoke Mandeville Hospital again, they did some experiments where they've wired people's brains up, and they said they were totally brain dead. And they've said, you know, think yes, think no, and there's a different wave pattern because they can actually hear. And there's
Well, because consciousness doesn't die, does it?
No, well, exactly. That's it. It's just a means to express it, isn't it? You know, but going back to the whole baby in the womb, you know, sound is a very natural thing to us. You know, from the moment of conception, we're surrounded by sounds, and you know that's why when, you know, babies will recognise their mum's voice, or if people have been or pieces of music that's being played to them, you know. And you know, unless a child's born deaf, and then it's all about vibration because they can touch the lips and feel the stuff. But you know, that whole thing about sound, it's our natural way of being, really, isn't it?
It's funny. It's funny because when we went to a Greek restaurant and they were playing the music, Amber, it was a young
daughter,
one.
I was very heavily pregnant with my daughter, and they were playing the Greek music, and she loved it.
She was floating,
dancing about it.
She was doing Zorba's dancing side.
Zorba the Greek dance.
It was quite cool,
though.
But there's also an interesting thing which you might find interesting, is talking about babies, is that when Amber was in Shona's womb, we were driving and I was going a little bit fast, and I heard a voice in my head, and it said, "Daddy, slow down, slow down, slow down." And I heard it 3 times, so I slowed down, put my foot on, and as we come around the bend, a car was on the wrong side of the road. So had I not heard that, we'd have had an head-on.
Wow.
Yeah, and I wasn't going that fast, but you know, about a little bit too fast coming up to a bend, you know.
Wow. See, that's
special baby.
Yeah, special baby. But that's the difference, you know, about that connection, isn't it? When you're consciously connected, you know, because you know, there's whole tribes, isn't it, in Africa and that, where you know they carry their babies on the back, and the babies don't have nappies on or anything because the mum knows when that child needs to go to the bathroom, and they stop. Don't put it back, you know, because there's such a connection there that's very natural. And I feel that we've all got that 100% connection. We've just forgotten how to remember. So we need to help people remember really how to do that, you know. So
and Rita, you know, I suppose Rita's more practiced at tuning into various things, but when it comes to family members and big decisions, like, it always seems to be a bit of a blockage. But Rita will always know when our daughter, Rita's daughter, it's my daughter too, a stepdaughter, she'll always know when she's having a bad day, a tricky day, and she lives 10,000, 12,000 miles away in Australia.
Yeah.
And she will know, and Kate will know when mum's having a tricky day as well. And it'll just be a quick message, you know, okay, or maybe a quick chat. But mum's particularly connected to the kids because you guys carry them, you know, so it's just, again, at the quantum level, there's no separation. There's no separation.
I mean, we call it consciousness, don't we? But, you know, scientists call it quantum entanglement, don't they? So a rose by any other name would smell as sweet, wouldn't it? You know, all the same. Yeah, that's true.
And the whole idea of everything in life, I suppose, is to be harmonious, and that's all we try to do with the gongs and the bowls.
For sure. And talking of gongs,
talking of gongs,
we have one.
And singing bowls are classed as gongs, yeah.
So again, we've got a
well, look, ours is bigger, Shona. Don't be bragging.
Yours is bigger than mine.
Now stop boasting.
It's a male thing. I say it all the time. We get a bit of a laugh.
In actual fact, yours is bigger than ours.
It is bigger, you know, with the hammer ball. Yeah, and, you know.
Yeah.
It's
coming out now.
It's got all what you call it, engravings inside. So yeah.
All right.
Oh, lovely.
We did initially. We got them years ago, and we were planning on selling some to people, and we played them all. We were like, "Oh no, we want to keep that one." Yeah, we're really rubbish at marketing and stuff like that. You know, we're like, "No, we'll just share them with people," but no, we're not going to sell anything. We just won't do that. So.
I must admit, I am quite envious of the size of your one.
Probably draw a line on that one there, Gary.
Well, you know, joking apart, you know, I know it's a boy thing, you know, but truly size does not matter.
No.
We did. We were at an event. It was actually an acupuncture. What do you call it? Training place, wasn't it? Chinese medicine and acupuncture school.
Right. Yeah.
And they asked us to go and open the ceremony with the gong and stuff. So we did, you know, we went along, and then we had like a space, you know, to talk about what we did, and we took some singing bowls, and we did have a couple for sale at the time. So one of them was very much like this. I mean, it's really heavy, you know, and they're not cheap. And there was that, and then we had one, because this other one, this is one of my faves. So this is I don't know if you can hear this.
Oh, that's beautiful, yeah.
So that's one of my, and it's not big, but this lovely lady came. And she was really drawn to this big dark one that has all these lovely etchings on. And then there was a little one smaller than that, about this big. So she picked up the little one, and it just sang like a dream, absolute dream. And she was like, "Okay, put that down." And she could not make the bigger one make a sound. And she's like, "There's something the matter with it." I'm like, "That's not the matter with it." Picks it up, makes it work, does the thing, you know, puts it back down. And I just said, "Look, you know, the little one wants, that's yours. That's resonating with you, you know." And she said, "Can I borrow?" Anyway, she like persisted all weekend, and she, bless her, and she just couldn't. And other people would come up, and it would sing like a bell, and she'd have and I go, you know, and she goes, "But I really like it." And I'm going, "Well, you're just going to have a really expensive bowl on your table."
Yeah.
That's not what
fruit bowl.
Put oranges in it.
Fancy fruit bowl. Why would you do it? So anyway,
this conversation lifted the depression.
Yeah, you know, it's like.
But joking apart and stuff, it doesn't matter, and that's what we say to people, because whatever the bowl is, people say to us, because some people go off certain chakras, there's certain bowls for certain chakras with certain notes, and that's great if you're into that. It can be very, very precise. We don't work like that. No. We go, everything we do is intuitive. So whatever we feel that person or that group needs, collectively or individually, that's what we go with. And we say to people, you can get a bowl as small as that, about the same size as the one you got there, Shona, or smaller. If you love it and you feel you can do good with that for yourself or somebody else,
set the intention.
Set the intention. It doesn't matter. And Jonathan Goldman comes up with a great equation that frequency plus intention equals healing. And I think it's simple but brilliant. And that for us applies to whatever modality people want to use as well. You know, whatever it is, doesn't have to be sound healing. If you have the right intention and you're sending that out with whatever modality you're using, and that your client has the same intention to heal or release, you're going to get it, because you've got symbiosis, you've got harmony. So, but as a man, and it's nothing to do with the size, the physical size, honestly, but it's about, for me, the resonance. And with a bigger bowl that's thicker,
that's amazing.
You get a much deeper sound for me. So I just find it physically, emotionally more present. But I'll still use a smaller bowl. But a lot of the time, we'll use whatever we're drawn to for that individual client. Or when we do the group stuff, we've now got 13 gongs. We're very lucky. That's a pay for them like. No one gave us them. But anyway, we
So
take
if anybody wants to donate some, we're open to
Donate a gong.
Help yourselves out, free sessions for life.
Sound sessions never ever the same, because it's always about the person or the group that's in front of you, and whatever you feel is the most important thing for them. So that is the beauty about sound healing.
What other instruments do you use, Phil?
We used to use other things like didgeridoos. Neither of us can circular breathe. That's the bit of the issue. So we'd have to and then go again. Rain sticks. Right. We've got some tuning forks that we'll sometimes use. The bowls. The drum. We've got, now and again, we'll use a drum. We've got a happy drum, which is like a metal tongue drum. But most of the time...
That sounds very ethereal, that's really...
Yeah, and we'll use that at the end of the group stuff. Most of the time, Gary, we use singing bowls and the gongs.
Oh, right, okay.
And the gongs are so big. There's one behind Rita there.
Right, yeah.
It's quite big, but that's 32 inches across, and it's a brilliant gong. It's highly polished. They make the most amazing sounds, and gongs and bowls are classed in the same thing. They're all classed as gongs, apparently. Okay. It's all about the overtones that they produce.
Yeah.
And that's why, and in that's where you get the healing, because, go on, you explain about the three sounds. This is
there's a difference. So a couple of things with the bowls particularly. But and like I say, when Phil talks about setting an intention, all the intention you can ever set is that the person's highest intention for themselves is supported. That's it. You can't interfere in people's healing or life, or that's not what it's about. So you create a space using the instruments we use and the intention that we create a space for that person to heal or journey to wherever they need to be or whatever they want it, because it's them doing it. So these are the sound beings. We're not the sound. We're just that instrument to help create that space for them. So there's nothing wrong with saying all these different bowls match a chakra with the notes and all that, because there's oh God, what was the name? Jesus. There's a book called A Song of the Spine. I can't think of a name now who wrote it. Fascinating book. So very good, different tuning forks for different vertebrae definitely make a difference. Kidney. But you've got to remember, everybody's different, haven't you? Everybody's got their own frequency. The thing with bowls, particularly with singing bowls, you'll sometimes buy or go into a store and they've got a musical note on the bottom that somebody's stuck on, a B flat or an F sharp or whatever. But you've got to be mindful that if they do come from the East, their pitch and their concert pitch is different from the West. So what might be a B for us won't be a B in the East. So we'd always say, look,
just play.
Don't worry, just play, see what it feels like, see what you're drawing. But when you've got a healing grade bowl, they call them, or the gongs or whatever, you're listening. I don't know if the mic will pick it up really, but you're listening for three things, because there's a fundamental, which is the note. Then there's a harmonic, that's just like when people are singing in harmony. And then there's something that's called an overtone, and that's like a wow, wow, wow in the background. So I don't know if it's going to be enough to pick up, really. So there's like a sing and a hum, and then like a wow over the top of it. Yeah. So if you're going to measure those waveforms, the fundamental note is the shortest wave, regardless of whatever the bowl is. Then your harmonic is a long wave, but the overtone is a really big long wave. And it's that waveform pattern that creates brain entrainment. And that's what takes the body down to the delta and the theta state that you go into in deep relaxation. And that's when the autoimmune system kicks in. So we can never say we heal people or we make your autoimmune system better, because we can't do that. But what you'll often find in sessions, private and groups, is that it's a wonderful example of how consciousness is separate. Because, people will say to people, don't be surprised if you fall asleep or if your body falls asleep. And they look at these, we've got 38-inch gongs, they're big things. And you can see people for the first time going, as if I'm going to fall asleep if you're hitting one of them. But it's that brain entrainment, you see. So often you'll see somebody on the bed or even in a group, and you'll hear, because their body's gone to sleep.
Exactly.
But they're totally cognizant of what's going on.
Do you find they work with depression?
Yes, yeah,
definitely.
Do you know what? There's a guy called Mitchell Gaynor, Dr. Mitchell Gaynor. He's actually passed over now. He was head of oncology at Strand Cornell in New York, and he's quoted as saying, because he studied it a lot, because a lot of his cancer patients were doing a lot better than he'd expected. And he asked them all, what have you been doing? And, they were trying various things, but the commonality with a lot of them was sound therapy. And as we said before, science quite likes that because they can measure stuff. So he really got into sound therapy. And he's actually quoted as saying there's nothing that it can't help with. And what it is, it helps the body. And it is, whether it's singing or the toning. When you're toning, you can't think of anything else. You just need to focus on it. It actually resonates and oscillates every cell of the being, which is still just a frequency. And it starts to let the toxins out. So that's why we say to people, you drink lots of water. You might feel a bit, you might feel super energized, or you might feel you want to lay down and go to bed, or, definitely avoid alcohol after a session if you can. But there's nothing that it can't help with. We've had a number of PTSD sufferers that have come individually. And, one guy, he's done 2 tours of Afghanistan. And he was blown away, and he said that's the first night's sleep I've ever had without being medicated
in 4 years.
In 4 years, he said that, and that was just after one session. So I can't speak in truth to say how it works exactly. I just know that it works, and we talk about overtones and harmonics and frequencies, but ultimately, for me. Again, I go back to the baby in the womb. There's something so organic and natural about sound and frequency and the being, because we're not solid, we're beings, is constantly seeking homeostasis. It's trying to be balanced in a chaos, a sea of chaos. So, I feel that's why, if somebody's depression or stress is the most important thing that's bothering that being, then that's what it's going to go and work on. People might come and they might go, I've got a really bad leg injury, or I've got a sore back, and you go, okay, we'll send energy to there for you. But, if you've got a big emotional issue, that's where it's going to go first, because that's possible. It was going to go to the root of whatever it is, really. Because again, it's about, the way Spirit showed it to me was a bit like, if you're driving somewhere and you get stuck on a traffic jam, you really need to clear where the problem starts. It's no good just keeping filtering people hither and thither if you're not dealing with where the issue is. You need to clear where that blockage is. And that's kind of, same with acupuncture, isn't it? And, tuber forks and reflexology, it's going to go to the problem as opposed to the symptoms that have fallen out of that problem there. So, I think we've got so used as well as the society to go, oh gosh, I don't feel great, or I've got a headache, or I'll have a pill, give me something to take it away. When it's the body's way of going, you know what, you need to slow down a bit. You need to have a little think about what you're doing to me, and honour this feeling, and what is it? What have you been eating? What have you been doing? What are you thinking about? Are you spending enough time outside? And I don't know which one. I don't know, it's the Hopi Indians, when they go to the healer, the shaman, he'd say, well, when did you last sing? When did you last dance? When did you last laugh?
That's very true, yeah. And it's no coincidence. It's like sort of, going to church. The churches, when you go in them, they have such wonderful acoustics inside. When people sing, it's just this beautiful, full feeling. And I think you combine that together with the light that comes through the coloured glass as well. It is basically a place of healing and enlightenment.
Oh, it is.
Absolutely.
It is, yeah.
Whatever your religion is, whether you're religious or you're not religious. I'm not religious personally, but I do believe in God. But nevertheless, you can honour the fact that when you go into these sacred places, you can feel that.
Yeah, and and they were built, with an understanding of sacred geometry. They were built exactly that way deliberately, even to the point of where they put pulpits so it would be more influential. But it's that whole, and then you talk about the ley lines that they're built on and the way they're facing, like you said, but the whole coloured glass that's all about that energy healing as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Now,
because colours are frequency.
Colours are frequency. There's people. We actually know a lovely lady in New Brunswick, and one of their healing modalities is she uses coloured lights with people, to help stimulate balance and whatnot. So, and we say, don't we? I remember when I worked in the government, even. Which they sent us on this really expensive training course. The money that got wasted, but anyway, it was a good jolly, I guess. But it was really what they wanted us to do was deliver a horrible message. That was the ultimate reason. But they sent us on this course that was all about marketing and getting people's attention and doing a 3-second window and blah 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 blah. But on that's when I realised, that's why fast food places are painted the colours that they are, because it doesn't encourage you to stay. They want you in and out, in and out, in and out. So yellows and reds and stuff. You'll never find anywhere where it's dealing with mental health, like psychiatric wards or anything like that. They'll never paint them yellow, because yellow exacerbates whatever mental state that we're in. It's actually, so it can be sunshine that's dead uplifting, but if you're in a really bad place, then it's going to amplify that. There was a prison, I think it was in the States, and they had this really violent, where they put the really violent offenders in one wing. And as they've got this art therapist in, and what she suggested was that they painted this wing pink, like pale pink, and they were, but I guess they were so desperate, they just wanted to try anything. Anyway, they did that, and the incidence of violence reduced significantly because of calm and colour. So you go to a fancy restaurant, and what have they done? They paint it in like sort of subtle colours. You've got like soft lighting, because it makes you start to feel relaxed and you want to stay. So you're going to spend money.
Yeah, exactly.
So all these things that, and we say about people, don't we? Somebody's off colour, or you're feeling a bit blue. Somebody's green with envy, red with anger. So it's in our language all the time, but we've separated from what it really is all about. And it's all about that frequency and understanding the influences of our surroundings, really. That's why nature, being out in the green, apart from the energy from the trees, that green is a soporific colour. It relaxes us, again, because it's connected with nature, isn't it? So,
For sure. And also, of course, with the cymatics, when you look at the patterns that the cymatics create, with the different sounds, and you then take that into nature and you start to look at the patterns in nature, they're very similar. And I think actually scientists did find hundreds of correlations between cymatic patterns and the patterns in nature. So it is all connected, all of it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And those patterns, isn't it, really, when we think about it? It's the same with labyrinths, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's about the energy flow, isn't it? That's really what that's all about. So
flowers have got patterns and everything, isn't it?
Yeah,
exactly. Snowflakes.
Everything.
And then it all comes down then as well to geometry, and then the math's involved with it as well, and it all comes down to, because they talked about the in certain sci-fi films, the universal language is math, and it's true, but that also, it shapes all those numbers are repeated throughout nature and throughout the dimensions, the golden fire not in the human body and stuff like that. And all it is ultimately about harmony. There's lots of harmonic balance throughout our multiverse. And again, go back to the sound, that's all we're trying to do, is restore the balance in human beings to that, and that balance back in the universe. And it's a phenomenal thing when you study all of that and you take it in and think it's all supposed to be in harmony. It's supposed to be harmonious.
And one of the interesting things, when we moved here, we're very lucky. We live literally on the ocean with a white sandy beach. It's really cool. But before we came, the person who owned this, built this property, they had acres and acres and acres. So they had this massive orchard that went across. So we just got a little bit of it. And so the trees weren't great, and we don't use any chemicals and nothing like that. And then there was this cherry tree, I think they call them cherries there, like a black cherry. And the guy we bought the house from, he's like, oh, leave it, it's dead, but don't cut it down, or because it had this, well, it was cut back and it had this funny black stuff on. He's like, don't burn it because it'll go into the atmosphere, blah, blah, blah. We were like, okay then, so we just left it. So we have a thing called a yome, which is a cross between a yurt and a dome right by the ocean. And we did sound.
If you didn't think we were hippie enough.
We're total hippies. But the interesting thing is that just playing the gongs there, or even in the house, the difference in the trees was phenomenal. So this cherry tree that was literally cut back and a couple of dead twigs on it, full of this black stuff, I don't even know what it's called, that flourishes now, and it's full of cherries. And the only thing
the amazing power of sound, and unfortunately we're going to have to cut it short now, which I'm very disappointed
at. Great guest, though.
So thank you so much, both of you. Been a pleasure, and thank you for joining us on the Allens Investigate. You can check us out at www.theallensinvestigate.com. We're broadcasting live on the United Public Radio Network 105.3 and 107.7 FM from New Orleans and also on Roku. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much again.
Amazing. Thank you so much for everything.
Thank you.